and we see this in coaching a ton as well, there's value into creating outlines for your classes, and it's, especially as a newer coach, a great thing to do. But if you just try to stick to the plan, even though you look across your room and there's struggling or there's partner discrepancies that you weren't planning for, or whatever it is, you're going to run your class into the ground. People don't have a good time. And it's not about you being a bad coach. Well, it's you being an inflexible coach. It's you having...
I would argue that it is about you being a bad coach. Well, there's the plan and there's the class. There's the plan and there's the class. Welcome.
Welcome to the Second Plan A podcast, where we take hard-earned lessons from the Mets and convert them into tools for navigating life's challenges. I'm Amber Hoover. I'd rather stick to the plan.
I'm Ryan Hoover, and what are we talking about today?
We're talking about being where your feet are. Yeah, we got that one on.
Okay.
So today we're moving on to our second plan A.
If you stay on your second plan A, you don't have to go to your second plan A.
I like that because I didn't write an intro for this podcast. I just realized.
Good thing I'm here.
Good thing you can start us off, because this is loosely based on your article that you wrote.
I write a lot of articles.
This is true. This one, we had attended 2 weddings, back-to-back weekends, and the messages were very distinct, very different. The one that landed with us the most, the one that resonated, the message that we took and carried forward was about being where your feet are. And this was in direct contrast to the other advice of have something to look backwards to, have something to look forwards to, and have something to look upwards to. And so I wanted to give us
literally everywhere except where you
are and what's going on. So I wanted to give us a little space to talk about it more in terms of what that means in life, what that means on the mats through training, and also what that means from a coaching perspective, and why it's not just a simple way of looking at life type of thing, but it's a much bigger, pervasive philosophy. Again, the be where your feet are just speaks across all of those bounds, and we feel works really well. Want to kick us off?
I feel like I did already.
I think we really said all there is to say. Honestly,
thanks everybody. I mean, the on the mats part, the training part, it's funny because one of my least favorite things that people ask me is, how do I get to blue belt? How do I get to purple belt? How do I get to level 3? How do I, I'm like, well, you should probably focus on the level that you're at right now.
Or you're never going to get to those things.
And you're never, And I mean, you see this in coaching too. Coaches come in and, well, how do I get to teach more advanced material? Well, get good at coaching the current material. I think this kind of looking forward, at least. Well, honestly, looking forward and looking backwards are both kind of pervasive in martial arts. Looking forward into the what's next kind of thing, and looking backwards and kind of being weighed down by lineage and, all that. Which, again,
that's also a look upward too.
I feel like I've beaten this horse to death, but there's nothing wrong with honoring your lineage or your instructors that help form and shape who you are and whatever. But I think in our industry, at least, it becomes almost like the measuring stick, the barometer for what makes a good coach. And I mean, I've known lots of people that had worked with a lot of amazing instructors, and they were terrible coaches. And then on the flip side, I've worked with people that I didn't know any of the people that they had worked with, and came up under, and they were tremendous coaches. I think in our world, you see a lot of everything. It's funny because I think there are some martial arts that probably tend to focus a little bit more on the kind of here and now. But as an industry, I don't think that's where we are. It's very much about what's next and, okay, but where'd you come from? Yeah.
Let's stay on the problem with looking backward as trying to focus. And so one of the main ones is lineage. Welcome, Vader, to the podcast. One of the main ones, as you're talking about, is lineage and over-reliance on not just what somebody has done in the past, but what somebody who taught them has done in the past. And the degrees of separation that creates is incredible. And now, I mean, there's a time and place for understanding and having perspectives. If my goal is to focus on the law enforcement side, I'm looking for someone who has some type of knowledge. Doesn't mean their own experience or even their training experience, but has focused in on that type of thing.
Yeah.
Versus if my goal is, as a civilian, being able to protect and defend myself, if I go to somebody who spent years working undercover in drug trafficking rings, like there's a big disconnect. And again, this focus on lineage and who came before them often ignores your present goals.
I just got back from teaching in Salt Lake City, and one of the conversations came up about scenario training. And we actually spent a decent amount of time talking about scenario training. And one of my biggest pet peeves with scenario training is instructors or coaches or whatever injecting their own life experiences into scenarios, which rarely have much relevance to the students that they are trying to help.
Right.
You know, especially if you have a very specific professional background that involves clearing homes with a stack behind you or making drug deals inside of a vehicle, those kinds of things. I mean, there's definitely things that I can learn from folks that have had that kind of experience, but there's little to no value in me putting most of my students through scenarios that evolve around situations that are going to involve those kinds of things. You know, it's like if I take somebody that's in my class that's 72 years old and I put them in a nightclub scenario, you know, it's not going to be relevant for most people at a certain point of their age or where they are in their life. And so having kind of cookie cutter ideas about what scenarios should look like, I think does a disservice to the students.
Yeah, one of my first experiences with scenario training, the context was, okay, you just got home and your door's been kicked wide open and you have to go in and clear. And I'm like, why am I going in?
Yeah.
Like, I was a young single female. I'm not going in that house. I'm calling the cops now and probably driving away, you know? So it might sound like I'm just being a snot or whatever, but scenario training is for your life, for your lifestyle. Yeah. And, you know, to that point, as we hit these summer months and we have parents reaching out about kids going off to college and that sort of thing, you know, they're looking for summer programs and summer classes. And we just got one recently, a dad, husband looking for training for his wife and daughter. And he specifically said, I don't want something that's continuous. I just want a program, like 6 weeks, whatever, be done. Mm-hmm. And, you know, okay, but your life changes and adapts and you have to be ready to adapt with that. The things you experience and need to prepare for in terms of self-defense as a mom and your 13-year-old child are vastly different than when it's mom and 17-year-old child, or now we're off in college and mom's alone or whatever. Right. Like there are different things, different life experiences there.
Right. So the be where your feet are thing is what should dictate in our world what sort of training that you are receiving. If I'm training in the exact same context and scenarios at 20 as a single college student as I am at 50, if you have, you know, a spouse and small children, it just doesn't make sense, you know? Yeah. So that's where I have an issue with our industry. You know, we're putting people in swimming pools and doing long gun defense, and it has no relevance to how most people are existing in their present lives.
Right. Another thing with, you know, looking backward is an evolution that's required. When we accept applications to the affiliate program and different things like that, we ask about their last training experience, and someone might write a paragraph about their training experience, but none of it was within the last decade or two. Yeah. And so you either think you know it all and there's nothing else to learn, or you don't realize that things are evolving underneath you and you're not willing to put yourself out there to go find them. Right. This was interesting for me because, you know, I took about a 10-year hiatus from the music world. And when I came back, I thought it was cool that people had these cool sheet protectors that had just a strip on top and a strip on bottom, so you could write on the paper easier than having to take it out of the sheet protector and back in. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But then I looked around, I know. Anyway, but then I looked around and
her definition of cool is...
That's a great invention. Anyway, I looked around and still...
You are such a nerd.
I know. Most people had iPads. on their stands. And at first I was like, no, absolutely not. And I kept printing out my paper, and I got my fun new sheet protectors that had the open spot. And at some point after printing like 20 pages one night, I was like, nope. An iPad just makes a ton of sense. And so life evolves. The 20 years or whatever it was I spent, that can't be right. The math won't math there. Let's call it 10. No,
I think the maths.
That's okay. Let's call it 10 years.
I'm not all that great at math, but I think I got that one.
10 years of playing music through middle school, high school, college, 10-year gap, and then going into
middle school would have
next.
been when?
It was at least in the 2000s. So yes. So there.
But you're from the 1900s, right?
Proudly born in. Anyway,
see where your feet are.
what about the problem with looking backwards in life? That keeps people in relationships that they should very well get themselves out of.
It keeps people in so many things that they should keep,
Yeah. But he used
jobs,
to be so nice.
careers,
I used to enjoy this. Yeah.
School. There's a whole host of things that keep you from progressing and moving forward and being the best person that you can be, because you're not focusing on the here and now, you're focusing on what used to be or what once was. Look, I would go back to 1988 in a heartbeat if that was an option. Like if all of a sudden somebody was like,
You have to give up your 2000s technology? Like, please take it.
yeah, God, yes.
Great.
Give me a brick or a bag phone, or no phone at all would even be better,
Yeah.
But that's not where we are, and that's not where we're ever going to be, again. So I relive those days in my playlists, and that's about it, I'm not spending time on what used to be, what once was. I very much try to, maybe to a fault in some ways, but I very much try to be right here, right now. I'm not worried about what happened 10 years ago, and I'm not thinking about what's going to happen in 5 years. That's why I hate when people come to me with like, hey, what's your 5-year plan? Where are you going to be in 5 years? Man, I don't know. And you don't know either.
No.
And I'm not saying that there's no value in putting it down and thinking about it. And if you have very specific goals that you're trying to reach, then you need some path. But the problem is just like what we talk about with violence, self-defense, martial arts, whatever, is you have to be able to deviate. You have to be able to roll with what comes. And
you set the goal, but how you get the goal is going to vary. And especially for something like this, you may never get it.
Right. It's the outcome agnostic thing again, like I know where I want to go, but I'm not married to how I'm going to get there. I am ready to switch things up, take a different path, pause, work on something else that hopefully gets me back to this thing. But if all I'm thinking about is what's up ahead of me, then I'm one, it's going to be very difficult to ever be happy now, because I'm constantly thinking about, well, if I could just do this, if I could just have this, if I could just make this much money, if I could just get this promotion, if I could just, save for this next house or whatever it is.
Yeah.
When we're constantly looking towards things that we want to have happen, we're missing out on the things that we actually can control right here, right now. And so I think it becomes very difficult to be truly happy in the moment if you're always looking everywhere else.
Right. So we've jumped into the problem with looking forward now, and it's...
Did I do that or did you do that? I think you did that.
Okay.
I think you prompted me, and
I'll take that. It becomes at some point trying to make the square peg fit in the round hole.
Yeah.
Because, well, it's the plan.
Right.
If you're trying to stick to the plan at all costs, it's not going to happen. Whatever your goal was, the reason you created the plan in the first place isn't going to be there. And we see this in coaching a ton as well. There's value into creating outlines for your classes, and it's, especially as a newer coach, a great thing to do. But if you just try to stick to the plan, even though you look across your room and there's struggling or there's partner discrepancies that you weren't planning for or whatever it is, you're going to run your class into the ground. People don't have a good time. And it's not about you being a bad coach. Well, it's you being an inflexible coach. It's you having...
I would argue that it is about you being a bad coach.
Well,
there's the plan and there's the class.
Podcast.
There's the plan and there's the class.
Yeah.
And actually, I before you called me in here for this, I was doing kind of a highline edit of this coach manual that I've been working on, and I was on this chapter where I'm talking about these things, and it's like newer instructors, coaches especially, I think it's important to have an outline.
Yeah.
But it should be like 1, 2, 3, not 1A, 1, 2, 3, 4 under A.
1
B.
minute to 1 minute and 35 seconds, 136 to 1, yeah.
You cannot micromanage human variables like that and be successful long term. We're very much dealing with real people and real situations, and when you try to script out every detail every second, not only will your students be miserable, but so will you.
Yeah.
It will burn you out really, really fast. But I think if you're new, you need some loose outline, because it's also easy to get lost in the stuff. And it takes time to get to the place where you can walk out into a room, get people doing a warm up, look around the room, see what you have, and then decide, all right, this is what I'm gonna work on today, or whatever I had planned on working on today probably isn't going to work in this group the way that I had hoped it would, so I'm gonna need to switch things up. And all of those are internal conversations that are happening while your class is pummeling or whatever. So
it's funny because this is a really interesting conglomeration of the past and the future. So if I'm coaching a class that I have outlined, my past self was creating an outline based on what it expected in the future.
Yep.
And then when I get to the coaching, if I try to assume that I was right and everything is, and just keep pushing the plan for this future that I predicted would happen, there's too much of a disconnect. It just doesn't work out the way you thought it would. And so it's important to read the room, not run the plan.
Yeah. Yeah. I just started taking over the kids' classes again in Charlotte yesterday. And I didn't know what I was going to do in the class. They are relatively new into a kickboxing rotation. Some kids in there that I have not worked with before. Most of them I have, but there's some kids in there that I had not worked with before. And so I didn't really go in with an idea of from a technical standpoint, what I wanted to achieve. I knew I wanted to go in and establish this is the way that I run classes, without saying that. Remind some kids that I have worked with before that, this is the way he runs classes, and make sure that the new kids quickly understand that, because if I don't deal with what's happening right here, right now, it's going to cause problems for me and for them and for the parents and whatever as we move forward. It was less about any kind of technical work and more about, all right, right here, right now, I'm going to see how everybody moves, see where they are, not where I want them to be, because I needed to meet them in this moment, not where I would like for them to be, or not assume that, they're not going to have this level or that level, so I didn't go in with a hard and fast idea about what I wanted to do, because I didn't know where they were. I didn't know where their feet were.
Yeah.
And I needed to get an idea of that before we looked at, anything else.
Meanwhile, in Gastonia, my kids' program also moved over into the kickboxing rotation. And since we run these rotations, you have some kids in there who have been there for a while, but are brand new to kickboxing because they came in at the jiu-jitsu rotation. And then you have some kids who've been there a long time, getting both rotations, that sort of thing. So these first couple of weeks are very much focused on setting the routine, them understanding what I expect. When they come to class, they have their shin guards on, they put their gloves against the wall. And my goodness, if one little kid, like every other second, was like, are we going to use our gloves today? Are we going to use our gloves today? And I'm like, why don't you do what we're doing right now, and you'll find out if we're going to use our gloves today. And it's cool because that's excitement. There is a value of looking forward. He's excited to use his gloves. He's brand new to this rotation. I get it. That's awesome. But also, to get to using your gloves, you have to be able to do the things we're focusing on right now.
In my class yesterday, I taught, whatever I taught. And one of the kids, and this is a kid that I know, and I've known him for a while, he says, well, what if, and I said, what if you work on what we're doing right now, and then we'll see about something else.
Whatever crazy thing he came up with.
And it's funny because a couple of the parents laughed, and one of them was like, I feel like Riley would have answered that question. And then one right next to this parent was like, I don't know. So
Riley is very Ryan at times, honestly. Yeah, I get
for
it.
better or worse.
I know. I also had to spend an inordinate amount of time going through making sure to establish, like, I'm not going to keep telling you the same things over and over again. And so when the kids, my goal mostly is understanding jab and cross. Like, I need to get these kids to learn the language so I can talk to them in the language that I want and not have to explain it every time, just like with anything. And, you know, they spent 6 months, I told them, we spent 6 months getting to know what front mount is and guard and knee on belly, and I can just say it and you do it now. We have to onboard you for that for kickboxing. And so, like, we were doing jab cross on the pads, empty hands, and inevitably kids are throwing cross jab. And so I'd come over and I would be like, which side is your jab? And they'd put up the wrong hand. And I'm like, how do you know what side your jab is? And they'd kind of look at me blankly and I'd point at their legs and they're like, the lead leg. And I'm like, okay, so which hand is your jab? And so, you know, it takes a long time, but that's how they learn to help themselves.
Yeah.
And so that's just part of the process. And then we can get cooking.
Yeah.
But they've got to be able to be where their feet are,
Right.
Be in their own place and recognize what's going on, not be thinking about what we're going to do next, the combinations we're doing later, all those kinds of things.
But that shows you that we're almost hardwired to think that way.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it has to be an intentional practice to force us to focus on right now.
Right.
You know, because you've got 7-year-olds that are, but what about this?
Yeah.
Or when do we get to do that? You
Yeah.
know? So it's almost built into us, or it's such a societal norm that they learn it
They pick
very,
up on
very
it fast.
early.
I'm sure they do because their parents are counting down the days till vacation or, you know,
Sure.
whatever's going on. And again, it's good to have things to look forward to. But if that's all you're doing, it's not that you're unhappy. You're just never here in the moment. And
Well, and even like it's a Saturday afternoon and people are already lamenting Monday. You know, like
yeah.
bro,
The whole Sunday scaries thing. I'm like why?
Enjoy the Saturday.
Yeah.
Enjoy the Sunday. Like Monday's gonna come regardless. It's like a conversation I've had with kids in the past, like my teens especially. Well, how was school today? You know, teens.
I hate school. I don't want to. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, how many hours a day are you there? You know, whatever they say, 7 hours, whatever it is. Okay, are you going to be there for that amount of time, whether it sucks or whether it's awesome? Yes. Okay, so do the best you can to make it the best it can be, because you're going to be there regardless. So why would you go into it with the idea and the mindset that all I'm thinking about is what happens after this is over, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas if I could intentionally work on trying to just be here and recognize that no amount of me thinking about what I'm going to do this afternoon or tonight or this weekend or whatever is going to change this
moment
now.
right now, yeah.
And honestly, the only change that it will do, if any, is make you hate this even more. You know?
Yeah. I saw something recently, and it was called it was like 3 "it's a good thing that" statements with every like bad situation or whatever. And so like you get a flat tire on your way to work. So rather than fixating on that flat tire, you think it's a good thing it's not raining. It's a good thing I have a car in the first place. It's a good thing my boss will understand. And even if they're irritated or mad, like I'll be okay at the end of this, that kind of thing. You focus on these 3 good things because you can't change the thing that is happening, but
Right.
you can change where your focus lies. All right.
All of that said, I love this mug. I've had this mug for like 15 years. It's nothing but Shakespeare insults, and they are so fantastic. All eyes and no sight. Highly fed and lowly taught. Lump of foul deformity. Infinite and endless liar and hourly promise breaker. Light of brain. Mountain of mad flesh. Bolting hutch of beastliness. Not so much brain as earwax.
Looking backwards is sometimes a good thing too. We get some great quotes.
This is my favorite though. I do desire we may be better strangers.
I believe it. I think that about a good few many people I come across.
Most for me.
All right. So last part, the problem with looking upward. So again, the situation we found ourselves in, it was more speaking of like a higher power.
Yeah.
for this conversation. It might be a higher power in some regards. It's, we're not saying like, oh, you shouldn't have religion, but it's more about where you're putting responsibility.
Yeah.
If
accountability.
Yeah, this thing sucks. Well, I have a higher power that can take care of that, or whatever. But there are times when you have very much control over a situation, but it's easier to knock it up the chain of command.
Yeah.
On the mat,
give it to God.
Like, yeah.
And look, I am not going to start some kind of religious debate here, but like
me tiptoeing around, give it to God, and Ryan just being like, give it to God.
Yeah. Regardless of, I could see the look on your face.
I was trying not to say that.
I know. What are we doing here? Come on.
You're right. Yeah, you're right.
Regardless of the religion, for the most part, there is implicit or at least implied freedom of will, and that in and of itself should be what dictates kind of your decisions and where you go from here. And things are going bad, things are terrible, whatever. Another Shakespeare quote, nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. The idea of, well, I'm gonna give it to God, or God's not gonna give me anything more than I can handle, or whatever aphorisms we want to use. The idea that we have free will means that He gave it to you. You have the ability to change, you have the ability to adapt, you have the ability to move. And if it's something that you can't change or move or adapt to, then why are you worrying about it? Why are you putting energy and effort and thought into these things?
That's a give it to God moment. Like, I
I
don't know if I'm going to get this job. Like,
right.
If you need to give it, now is the time to let it rest somewhere else.
Yeah, as long as you've actually done the work that is required to get the job.
That part.
Like, if you didn't do the work, if you didn't put the best resume forward, if you didn't give a good interview, if you didn't show up on time, if you
Yeah.
If you showed up 15 minutes late, that's on you. Like, God didn't do that, the devil didn't do that. Like, you knew there was going to be traffic.
There always is.
Yes.
And you probably planned to be there on time, which is crazy. Planned to be there early. Because then it'll be you showed up 15 minutes late, you weren't prepared, whatever it is.
Well, it just wasn't meant to be.
It wasn't meant to be. Well, no, you did that to yourself.
Yes.
But again, why take responsibility when the ethereal
decisions,
world
yes.
can take responsibility? So if we take this to the mat, upward-looking...
You don't want to take it to the mat.
Upward-looking mat cultures produce followers. They produce people who argue over the instruction manual and what they meant 50 years ago writing it and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Not leaders, not people who can think for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to quote Bruce Lee, right? Yeah. And Bruce Lee had, if he actually said them, Bruce Lee had some great quotes. He did. The wild thing about that is you get in the JKD community so many dudes arguing about what Bruce Lee taught, what he did, and if you actually listen to what he wrote about and the concepts and the principles, he didn't want you doing the same things that he was doing 50 years ago. I think he would be appalled to see people arguing 50 years later about this technique or that technique, looking at the evolution of violence and culture and martial arts that's happened since that time, So, especially in the martial arts, you get these luminaries that almost become like deities, and people are so emotionally invested that it becomes like religion. It becomes like, the Bible or the Quran or whatever, and I just don't think that's the way it was supposed to be or meant to be. Martial arts should be a living, breathing, evolving kind of discipline system, whatever you want to call it. And anybody that was on the level of somebody like Bruce Lee in terms of influence. I'm not talking about in terms of fighting ability, anything like that. I don't care about that. I think would recognize that and would acknowledge that and would promote the idea of, he did promote, take what is useful and discard the rest. If you look at Krav Maga, the logo is, the lore of the logo is good techniques come in, bad techniques flow out, and if you are holding on to techniques just because that's the way that Amy did it or whoever, you're not understanding the goal, the mission, the principle, the concept, the idea of, especially for self-defense, people don't fight the same. If people haven't understood in 30 years of UFC that fighting has changed, then it's just because they're unwilling to acknowledge it, I
mean, that's the social media, internet has made the world smaller. It's brought so much stuff together. You can see so many other influences. It's not just about what you experienced growing up fighting in your backyard kind of stuff. It's all of these other cultures and skill sets and ways to fight.
Well, so again, I was in Salt Lake City this past weekend, and one of the guys that assisted me that was with Jared's group, Andrew, he Saturday morning was going to grand opening of Nate Orchard's new 10th Planet place in Salt Lake City. And he came back and I asked him how it was, and he was like, do you guys all get together in some kind of weird secret gathering and decided we're all going to teach this for the next,
I knew that's where it was going.
And I said, well, if you go back 30 years, people would teach what they taught, and outside of their training center, nobody knew what anybody else was teaching unless you went physically to seek out something. Well, now you scroll on Instagram and you're going to see 20, 30 people teaching an arm drag into a double leg or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that information is so much more prevalent and pervasive and accessible as compared to what it used to be, so I think there are a lot more trends in our industry because people are seeing it's so easy to see what everybody else is doing. And even if you're it doesn't even have to be intentional. You don't even have to be intentionally looking to see what people are doing. You just spend 10 minutes scrolling on Instagram, you're going to see 30 videos of different things happening,
Well, and that situation a little bit different, but we experienced this with Hard Ready every year that we did it, where just good fight tactics are what they are. And so there's usually some type of golden thread between all of these disparate seminars. And we didn't get together and say what we were teaching, but we understand fighting and energies, and we also take each other's sessions, so we're able to relate it back.
Well, another thing is we're all, especially in an event like that, we are all looking at what's happening right now. Mm-hmm. We're not focused on what used to be or what once was or anything like that. We're all trying to bring people the most up-to-date, relevant information.
Yeah. So in that event, we are very aware our feet are. This is the skill of being present. Yeah. And this is not just relationships or, life in general, but also when people like to say situational awareness. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because we are absolutely terrible about being in the present. Mm-hmm. And then you just tell somebody, well, use situational awareness and walk on, when it's people really don't have a good grasp of what that looks like.
Yeah. It's funny because Mike and Seth just posted a video, something about OODA loop. Yeah. I don't watch your videos, dude. But I screenshotted it and I sent it to Mike and I was like, oh, you said OODA loop, gross. I said, what are you gonna do next? Make a video on fast, slow is smooth, smooth is fast?
People have been saying that lately, like it's this new miracle drug, and I'm like, this has been around forever. Anyway, keep going, stay on one pet peeve, and then we'll move to the second one. So OODA loop, Mike.
Yeah, no, well, I mean,
the ICU.
Well, the idea is, the first O in OODA loop is observe, right? And so, and it's not that I don't think there's value in the concept. I do. I just think it's one of those things that is massively overplayed and overwrought with PowerPoints and charts and
there's
all
this big
stuff.
Mystery around it.
But it's not that. It's a thing that we do all day, every day. Some of us better than others, especially when it comes to, I think, personal safety and being able to recognize when something seems out of place or whatever. I was at the center last night, and one of our older members who was there with his granddaughter, they had just gotten back from London, and he was telling me a story about they were out walking in London, and he had seen this guy kind of acting a little weird, a little strange, whatever. And the next thing he knows, the dude like really quickly starts approaching him and gets like right in his face. And I remember Steve immediately goes and checks the guy's hands, like checks. If you're not watching this, I'm talking about like checking biceps, checking like wrist tie kind of thing, not like actually looking at them. He's like, I don't know what this guy's doing or what he's happening. He's looking to get wrist ties basically. And you know, if he hadn't seen the guy acting a little off beforehand, I don't know that in the moment it would have registered as an issue. You know, all of a sudden this guy's in my face, but maybe he's just asking for time or directions, or you know, he just turned the wrong way and we ended up nose to nose or whatever. But by him recognizing and noticing earlier that the guy seemed a little bit off, it got him there faster.
Yeah.
You know, so the being in the moment of I'm able to walk down the street and walk down the road and take in what's going on around me, you know, may have been the thing that had that situation come out okay.
Yeah. It's not being paranoid, it's just being present.
Yeah. It drives me crazy when people are like, oh, you're just parent, blah, 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 whatever. I'm like, okay, but do you wear your seatbelt? You know, like.
Yeah.
Are you wearing your seatbelt because it's a law, or are you wearing your seatbelt because there's a chance you might get in a car accident?
And you don't want to go head first through your windshield, right?
Like,
Yeah.
Why, this is a silly conversation.
These are the same people who, you know, will pick up a penny that's heads up or step over a crack, you know, like hold their breath in a tunnel, you know, these kinds of things where it's like.
She does all of those.
She doesn't actually. I frequently like jinx us with saying things because I don't care. I don't believe in any of it. I'll be like, wow, we haven't had to go to the vet with a dog recently. Like I have no fears of saying things like that. He loves it. Anyway, deeper on being present.
Okay.
I think there's, especially if we look at like relationships, there's a big emphasis on presence in big moments. Anniversaries, Valentine's Day, going out, you know, making a whole plan, getting dressed up, going out, like this one thing. But there are going to be way more Tuesday nights at home, you know, Monday nights.
Way more. So many more. All the more.
I'm going to leave it there. Then there are going to be, you know, going out or big moments. And so presence has to be what you bring to these just unremarkable moments day in and day out. Because if at some point in the future you're struggling in that relationship, you're not thinking, oh, but we had so much fun when we went out to Disney World or when we went to that event. Or you might try to think about those big things and like pull those good moments from the past, but consistency matters so much. You know, the things you do day in and day out, kind of like what we were talking about last episode, the simple, not easy, the monotonous, tedious, just day-to-day things. If those aren't adding up to good experiences, that makes up the 80% probably plus of what you remember, you know, in your past and your experiences and your connections. So, you know, presence is what you have to bring to the small moments, not just the big moments.
Yeah. Well, and even the big moments, I think, are mostly overshadowed by the lead up to them. You get through the Christmas and you're like, all right, well, what are we doing for New Year's? You get through New Year's and it's like, what are we going to do for Valentine's Day? And, you know, like it's almost like you get through the thing and then you start thinking about the next thing, you know, and there's a month or two between things and it's like, okay, but what about 10 o'clock this morning? You know, like,
yeah.
And again, it's, I mean, I guess it's like any endeavor, you know, it's the discipline, it's the daily kind of intention behind doing these things with regularity and consistency, and you know, it lifting weights or whatever it is. You know, if you lift weights 6 times a year, you're not going to have any viable results. Honestly, you'll just hurt yourself. Like that's what'll happen. Sure. And so if you are engaging meaningfully in a relationship or your business or whatever 6, 8, 10, 12 times a year, there's no way that's going to be healthy either. So I think if you can relate it to something like fitness, and I think everybody can recognize if you only do fitness 10 times a year,
yeah,
you're not doing fitness, like that's not a real thing. And so if you're just waiting for the next big event or holiday or whenever Hallmark tells you to celebrate,
to be in the moment,
yeah, then you're not really doing that thing.
Yeah, it's people who don't really come to classes or train a lot but hit a bunch of competitions.
Yeah.
And it's like you're not building your skills, you're just rolling the dice and seeing what happens.
Yeah. And throwing money at it. Like, what are you doing, bro? Those things are expensive.
It's true. It's true. All right.
Take that money and get a private lesson.
So the be where your feet are idea, it's not about telling you what to think or what to feel. It's not a script. It's just telling you, giving you permission to
Chill the fuck out.
Go through your OODA loop. Just observe, orient yourself to what's important in that moment. Decide how you want to spend that moment and act. I was not ready to put the OODA loop in this conversation. I'm sorry. I blame Mike. Anyway.
Thanks, everybody.
That's the second time we've ended this podcast before the podcast ends. But luckily, I do think we're close. Be where your feet are.
I am. Stop telling me.
When this episode posts, it'll be Wednesday, May 6th. And on Friday, May 8th, we are going to have a kick-ass heavy bag class, followed by beers for those of age, and Mexican food, and cervezas, and great conversation. This is not a late Cinco de Mayo celebration that we're doing. It is a celebration for Tom. And the reason I bring him up is because he was a great embodiment of be where your feet are.
Mm-hmm. So Tom was a member of ours for, I don't know, decades,
at least
more.
Before I was there.
So more than a decade. I'm terrible with time and numbers and whatever because I'm where my feet are. But once he had a few health problems here and there. I mean, he was,
late 70s.
Late 70s.
For the most part, yeah.
But even with that, he didn't, that dude did not, I never heard Tom talk about what he used to be able to do or, what he wished he could do or anything like that. That guy just showed up. If his arm was in a sling, he had a kettlebell in the other hand, he didn't complain. He didn't whine about this thing or that thing. He just lived in the moment. He continued writing. He continued, doing private lessons with you, even to the point where even when he got to where he couldn't drive, he still had you coming to him at that point. I think that dude squeezed out every little bit of life that he absolutely could, right up until the end. He was the maybe the epitome of all gas, no brakes when it comes to just living. He wasn't looking to just settle. He wanted to keep active and keep moving, and he was weird in all the best ways. I'm talking about Tom, not you.
I'm just saying it's a thing.
Yeah. So yeah, I when I heard that he didn't want a service or anything, that he just wanted people to get together, have Mexican food and beer and have good conversation, I thought, well, that's the most Tom thing I've ever heard.
Like literally to the end and beyond. He didn't want people just sitting around thinking of the past. He wants them enjoying the present moment.
Right. With people that were still here.
Yeah.
Like I learned a lot kind of just from being around Tom. It was not the traditional sense, just Tom sitting here telling me how to live. He just lived it,
Yeah.
And if you're living in the moment and you're paying attention to what's going on around you, there were a lot of lessons to be learned there. And then still somehow after he passed, he was still imparting wisdom. So I hope we have a decent turnout Friday. But if there's 6 of us,
it's going to be the best time.
Yeah.
And if there's 60 of us, it's going to be the best time.
Yep.
That's our look at being where your feet are. If you enjoyed this podcast, this discussion, leave us 5 stars, follow, share, all that kind of thing. Really helps us out, and we really like to see your engagement. If you enjoyed Vader Hoover making his appearance, let us know. Ryan's youngest daughter will super appreciate that. subscribe, all those things. If you didn't enjoy the podcast, obviously overreact, do all those same things. Thanks for listening to Second Plan A, and we look forward to growing with you next time.
I'm not going to say it a
You have to
third
do it
time.
again. You have to do it again.
It didn't work the first 2 times.
Try it one more time.
Thanks, everybody.